You're sitting at your kitchen table looking at your paycheck and something feels deeply wrong. You're making more money than your parents ever did at your age. You've got a real salary, a real job, maybe even a 401k that you barely understand. And yet somehow every month you're scraping the bottom of your bank account just like they warned you not to. Meanwhile, you remember your dad talking about how he raised a family of 4 on $30,000 a year. He owned a house, he took vacations, he even managed to save something. So what is going on? Are you just bad with money? Are you spending too much on avocado toast like the internet keeps insisting? Or is something much bigger happening here that nobody is actually talking about? My name is Kanu, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, economic history, and why the financial rules that worked for your parents seem completely broken for your generation. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right but still falling behind, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up circumflex euros, because what I'm about to show you might completely change how you see your own financial situation. Let's start with the most uncomfortable truth in modern personal finance. A dollar in 2024 is not the same as a dollar in 1990. And I don't just mean that in the vague, hand-wavy way that economists talk about inflation. I mean it in a very specific, very measurable way that directly explains why your $50,000 feels like it's evaporating before you can even enjoy it. If your parents earned $30,000 in 1985, that money had the purchasing power of roughly $85,000 today when you adjust for general inflation. So right off the bat, you're not actually ahead. You're already behind by about $35,000 in real terms even before we get to the interesting part. But here's where it gets really fascinating. General inflation doesn't tell the whole story. In fact, it might be one of the most misleading statistics we use to measure financial health. See, inflation is an average. It blends together the price of everything circumflex euros, groceries, electronics, clothing, furniture, energy. And some of those things have actually gotten cheaper over time. A TV that cost $1,200 in 1990 now costs $300 and it's 10 times better. A long-distance phone call that cost $1 a minute is now essentially free, but here's the problem. The things that have gotten dramatically cheaper are mostly things you buy once in a while. The things that have gotten dramatically more expensive are the things that eat your paycheck every single month, and that's where the real story begins. There are 3 specific categories of expenses that have increased far beyond what normal inflation would predict. And they happen to be the 3 most important things in your financial life: housing, healthcare, and education. Let's start with housing because this one is the most visible. In 1985, the median home price in America was around $82,000. Adjusted for inflation, that would be roughly $230,000 today. But the actual median home price today is closer to $420,000. That's not inflation, that's a completely different market, and it gets worse when you look at it through the lens of income. In 1985, the median home cost about 3 times the median household income. Today, that ratio has stretched to nearly 7 times in most major cities and well over 10 times in places like San Francisco, New York, or Austin. Your parents didn't buy homes because they were smarter or more disciplined. They bought homes because homes were actually affordable relative to what people earned. Now let's talk about healthcare because this one sneaks up on people. In 1980, the average American family spent about 7% of their income on healthcare. Today, that number sits closer to 17% when you factor in premiums, deductibles, copays, and out-of-pocket costs. And if you're self-employed or working for a small company without great benefits, you already know this math intimately. Your parents could get sick, go to the doctor, and not spend the rest of the month doing financial triage. That's not a luxury most people have today. And then there's education, which might be the most dramatic shift of all. Between 1980 and today, the cost of a 4-year college education has increased by over 1,200% after adjusting for inflation. Not 12%, not 120%, 1,200%. Meanwhile, wages for college graduates have grown by maybe 19% in real terms over the same period. Your parents went to college, got a degree, and entered the workforce without a $50,000 anchor attached to their ankle. Many of you are starting your financial lives already in a hole before you've even cashed your first paycheck. Now here's something that the inflation charts don't capture. And it might be the most important part of this entire conversation. The experience of money is relative, not absolute. Your parents grew up in an era where financial progress felt visible. You started your career, you saved up, you bought a starter home, you upgraded over time. The feedback loop was clear. Work hard, spend reasonably, build wealth, repeat. But something strange has happened to that feedback loop for your generation. You're working just as hard, you're spending just as reasonably, but the wealth isn't building at the same pace. And when financial progress feels invisible, something happens psychologically that most people don't talk about. You start to feel like you're doing something wrong. Like there's some secret that everyone else knows that you don't. And that feeling of falling behind, even when you're doing everything right, creates a specific kind of financial stress that's almost impossible to shake. Here's what makes it worse. Social media has given everyone a highlight reel of other people's apparent financial success. Your college roommate just bought a house. Your cousin posted about their vacation to Italy. Your coworker drives a new car every 2 years. What you don't see is the debt behind those decisions, the parental help, the inheritance, the partner income. Or the simple fact that some of those people are genuinely struggling despite what their Instagram suggests. This comparison trap is relatively new in human history. Your parents didn't see a constant stream of other people's financial wins. They compared themselves to their neighbors, not to a curated global feed of prosperity. Let's talk about something that rarely comes up in financial conversations but quietly drains your purchasing power every single month: subscription creep, lifestyle inflation, and the commoditization of convenience. Your parents didn't pay $15 a month for Netflix, $10 for Spotify, $13 for Hulu, $100 for a phone plan, $80 for high-speed internet, and $200 for software subscriptions they use twice a year. None of those categories existed. The baseline cost of a modern life is fundamentally higher than it was a generation ago, and we've accepted it so gradually that most people don't even notice it happening. Then there's the way the job market itself has changed. Your parents likely worked for one employer for decades, accumulated pension benefits, received regular raises, and had genuine job security. Today, the burden of retirement savings has shifted from employers onto employees. The pension has been replaced by the 401k, which is only as good as your ability to consistently contribute to it. Health insurance has become something you negotiate for, not something that's simply provided. The gig economy promises flexibility but delivers financial instability. More and more people are piecing together income from multiple sources, none of which come with the safety nets that previous generations took for granted. And here's something truly important that almost nobody says out loud. The financial advice your parents give you is based on a world that no longer exists. When your dad says just buy a house, it's a great investment, he's drawing on his experience in a market where that was straightforwardly true. When your mom says just save 10% of your income, she's calculating based on a cost of living structure that has fundamentally changed. They're not wrong based on what they know. The world just changed underneath the advice without updating the instructions. Now, before this video turns into a 10-minute exercise in financial despair, let's talk about what you can actually do with this information. Because understanding the problem is only useful if it changes how you respond to it. First, stop measuring your financial success by the same yardstick your parents used. Homeownership by 31, income supporting a family, a pension waiting at 65, a circumflex euros, these aren't realistic benchmarks for most people today. And chasing them can lead to genuinely destructive financial decisions. The person who stretches to buy a house they can't afford because that's what adults are supposed to do is not winning. They're just conforming to an outdated script. Second, your highest return investment right now is your income, not your stock portfolio, not your savings account, your income. Because the math of modern finances is unforgiving, the fastest way to improve your situation is to increase the numerator. That might mean developing skills that are specifically valuable in today's market, learning things that employers will actually pay more for, building alternative income streams through freelancing, consulting, or creating something online. A 20% raise does more for your financial life than almost any optimization you could make to your spending. Third, be ruthless about the 3 big expenses. Housing, transportation, and food are the categories that genuinely move the needle. Cutting your coffee budget by $50 a month is noise. Finding a roommate, living somewhere more affordable, or driving a used car instead of financing a new one a circumflex euros, those are signals. And fourth, give yourself some actual credit. You're navigating a financial landscape that is genuinely more complicated and more expensive than the one your parents faced. The fact that you're watching a video like this, thinking critically about your money, means you're already doing something that most people never bother to do. So there you have it. Your $50,000 salary feels poorer than your parents' $30,000 did because in many measurable ways it actually is, not because you're doing something wrong. Not because your generation is lazy or entitled, but because the costs that matter most a circumflex euros, housing, healthcare, education a circumflex euros, have risen dramatically faster than wages. Because the social safety nets that made financial progress feel steady have been quietly dismantled. And because the financial advice that worked a generation ago was calibrated for a world that doesn't exist anymore, the goal isn't to feel hopeless about this. The goal is to stop blaming yourself for a structural problem and start making decisions that actually fit the reality you're living in a circumflex euros, not the one your parents remember. If this video gave you a new way of thinking about your financial situation, subscribe for more. I put out videos every week breaking down the psychology and math behind money in a way that actually makes sense for real people. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. They'll probably thank you for